Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Badruddin Muhammad.
And my name is Talha Rafiq.
And together we run the College Muslim Podcast, a podcast that discusses the Muslim American experience and growing up Muslim in the Western world and how we've navigated that, the tool strategies, the life experiences we've had, and just to show you that you are not alone. And today's topic is?
Today's topic is a very interesting one. But before that, as usual, we are not sheikhs, we
Yes.
are not muftis, we are not Islamic scholars, we are not providing Islamic advice. All we are sharing is our experience, what we've gone through, going through an American Western kind of schooling experience from kindergarten all the way through up through college.
Yeah.
And hopefully showing that, like Badruddin said, that you are not alone and that a lot of the experiences we've all shared and there are ways to navigate your way through it.
Yep.
With that,
Yep.
today's topic, it kind of stems from this weekend being Halloween weekend. Hollow weekend, where everyone is going out to parties, having a good time, wearing things that we are not
good is subjective, but
having their
version.
eyes having a good time, but doing things that we as Muslims should not be doing. And
Yes.
the reason it kind of stems from there is because the other day I had a friend who invited me to a Halloween party, and they know I'm Muslim, right? So they were like, "I know you're gonna say no, but I'm still gonna
just want to check."
Yeah, I just want to check. Like, I have a party. Do you want to come? And I said,
I love when my Muslim friends do, or like my non-Muslim friends do that. They're just like, I know you're Muslim. I feel like this is wrong, but I just want to double check.
Yeah.
Just like, I appreciate that.
Yeah, like, I appreciate you looking out for me, but no, right? So one of my friends asked me that, and literally that evening, I got a message. We actually got a message, a DM on our Instagram account, The
Yes.
College Muslim, from one of our listeners, and they said that one of the problems they had faced that they think might be a good topic to talk about is, as you're progressing through your education and going to higher levels of education,
Yes.
how religion is in a way looked down upon or seen as like not for someone who's smart, right?
Yeah.
Basically, it's like seen as like religion is for those who are uneducated. And as you progress through your education, as you get to more higher institutions, and the school me and you go to is pretty up there when it comes to institutions. So sometimes other individuals, whether it be Muslims or non-Muslims, can look onto religion and be like, wow, it's really that conservative.
It's very archaic.
It's very archaic. Like you have,
old. It's just backwards.
It's backwards.
Whatever derogatory terms you want to use for this.
Yeah, and it can also come off. Wow, my voice. But it can also come off in ways that like can be so direct sometimes. So sometimes it'll just be a look, or it'll be a feeling, or you might lose some friends. But in reality, it's a kind of perception on religion that demeans religion.
Yeah, and a lot of it just comes from the fact that, I mean, this is very, very, I mean, it's not unique to it, but it's a lot more represented in Western society, because the way we pursue education is a lot through like the scientific method. Is like one that's used a lot, even in science and even outside of science too. It's like you have to have evidence to back up your claim. Even like in science, that's scientific method. That's hypothesis experimentation, results, data analysis, all that. And then in humanity, it's more like, if you have a thesis, you need evidence. If you have a thesis, you need evidence. So when religion comes along and says, hey, for some of this is the thesis, this is the claim, this is the thing this is the shahada.
Yeah.
But the evidence for it might be something you might have to search. But in addition to that, you need to have faith.
Yeah.
You need to have a understanding that some things are going to be unknown to you. You may find certain tidbits here and there, but there are going to be some things that are unknown to you. You're not going to know what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala looks like. You're not going to know what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam looks exactly like. There's not going to be a picture of that. You're not going to see angels flying around you. You're not going to see jinn in front of you.
Yeah.
And that to the educational system is very that's very backwards. That's not something that can be proven, and therefore it is false.
Yeah, and the basis is all based on blind. There's a reason why it's called faith, right?
Yeah.
In a way, it is blind faith.
It is blind faith.
There is this moment, or this concept called, we haven't proved the concept of a soul, for example, right?
Yeah.
Through a scientific tested method.
Yeah.
There is no proven concept of a soul.
Yep.
So to have components of like a soul, or have components of an afterlife, or have components of
just a lot of the unknown.
Or like, I was searching for another word that I completely forgot, but basically
hidden, the things that exist in the akhirah.
Yeah, there's things you
outside
cannot,
of our purview.
There's things you cannot prove, and in an educational system, especially the higher up you go, right?
You have to prove everything.
You have to prove it. You have to be like, where is this coming from? What is the reason? And the level of proof we have is the Quran, and a lot of people will not view that as a valid form of proof.
Yeah.
When that is the extent of proof that we currently have in our modern day.
Yep.
So that message, by the way,
and it's not to say that Islam is without proof. There are certain things that can be proven, but at the end of the day, certain aspect, not a good amount, but there are a lot of aspects of Islam that require faith.
Yeah, and
faith to education is very counterintuitive for them.
Yeah, and the core of religion is a God, and we truly have no way to 100% prove the existence
Yeah.
of God.
There's things that can
without
show it,
we
but
can show it, but
there's no,
without
like, there's no infallible proof that the education is the scientific method that humanities requires.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
And yeah, so that was a recommendation made by one of the listeners, one of you guys. So we appreciate it for that. If you ever
Yes.
have topics that you can have ideas about, feel free to shout them out like
Send them
this.
our way.
And I think with Halloween weekend and like the like levels of like party and going out and all that stuff that's going on right now, it's a perfect time to talk about that.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because you might feel a lack of composure in your Islam. You might feel like there is more difficulty right now because in a higher education system, others might look down on you for having saying no.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to describe it. Just sometimes there will be certain things, a lot of things that when you go to college in America, people will, hey, can you do this? Can you do that? Do you want to do this? Do you want to do this? And sometimes you have to say no. And yes, no is a complete sentence, but at the end of the day, saying no can sometimes get negative responses from people. And how do we deal with those negative responses is what we want to talk about today.
Exactly. So I think this episode's beginning is going to be unique. Usually we start off by talking about like what is our experience with that, but I think
there's just countless.
Yeah, there's just with this is way too countless, and also like we literally have experienced it like within the last week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks.
Sometimes we experience it. Honestly, we experience it on a day-to-day basis. Like there are certain things that we go through our life, whether it be physical contact with the opposite gender, whether it be we talked about crushes and dating a little bit in our last episode. So saying no to that, saying no to drinking and drugs in our first episode. Honestly, all these episodes that we talked about in this podcast have a lot to do with saying no or saying I cannot do that or saying I do something in a different way. That saying those things and respecting yourself to say I will not abide by your world purview is something that it takes a toll. It takes a baggage.
Yeah,
there is negative emotions associated with that.
And you will have a negative. Our main focus today is you will have a negative response from a lot of individuals, especially in academic institutions. And this is okay. We'll break into these two parts as well. Right. Is you'll feel the negative response from both other Muslims as well as other non-Muslims. So we're not saying this is actually really unique because we're not saying this will just come from a difficulty from non-Muslims. We're saying you will actually get a lot of negative feedback.
I think that makes it harder too, because if you get it from non-Muslims, if it was solely from non-Muslims, you could just be like, okay, it's like a non-Muslim thing. I'm Muslim, therefore, like it's fine. But when you get it from other Muslims sometimes, which happens at educational institutions, because educational institutions they're not only pushing their worldview onto, pushing their sort of thesis claim kind of evidence-based framework onto non-Muslims, they're pushing onto Muslim students as well, because we are students here. So you will get some of that pushback from Muslims as well, and that can hurt a lot more sometimes.
Yeah. All right, so let's start there.
Let's start there.
Let's
start with the non-Muslims, and then we can slowly guide our way into the Muslim sphere.
Okay.
I think that'll be easier.
So when we're presented with an opportunity to do something, it doesn't matter what it is. Okay, you can pick from our various previous episodes, right? There's a million different topics you can
scroll through a library of the college Muslim, you'll see everything.
You'll see everything, but like
most of it.
Let's say, for example, taking in Halloween, because today
Halloween. Okay, Halloween's a good one.
Is Halloween today or tomorrow?
Today is the 29th, so
Monday. Okay, so
but
honestly,
it's Halloween weekend, so
this video will be probably posted tomorrow then.
Yeah.
So we'll be posting this video tomorrow. Yeah. And specifically not using Halloween weekend as an example, right?
Yeah.
We get asked by a couple of our friends, we're going to go to this Halloween party, or we're going to go out to go eat at this place, blah, 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 whatever, right? You're being invited to something at a place where you know that they're going to be dressed in ways that we're not allowed to dress as Muslims. Yeah. They're going to be partaking in activities that we're not allowed to, for example, drinking or smoking or vaping, and just doing things that we're not allowed to do.
Yeah, and interacting with people of the opposite gender in a certain way.
And so these are non-Muslims. Let's say, for example, our first case is non-Muslims asking you this, right? You say no. Now, at a higher academic institution like the one we're at,
and I feel like we have different experience on this too, so we can talk about that as well.
So we'll dive into that. But at an institution where, like, for example, we go to USC, we go to a good school, like there's a lot of like educated people here. Yeah. If I say I'm not going to do these things for these reasons, this is where, what does that response look like? So do you want me to start, or do you want to start with?
How about you start, and then
I'll
follow.
From my experience, the way that they've kind of like viewed me is like as someone who's like too conservative.
Okay.
Right. So it's like bro, come on, like it's not that bad, for your health it's not crazy, like you can go out, you don't
Yeah.
some of them will be like, you don't have to drink or anything, right?
I've got that.
Yeah,
Yes,
like they're
yes.
like, you don't have to drink, you don't have to smoke, you don't have to vape, we won't make you do that, but come,
Yeah.
like have fun, like jump
Have
around,
fun.
dance, like have a good time.
Yeah.
And so when I refuse that, when I say no to that, right, it's like, yo, man, you live in like LA, like you've grown up here your entire life, like
I love that little accent bit that you did right there.
that, yo, man,
Yo, man, you
yeah,
live in
yo,
LA.
man. But anyways, like they're like, how, like they're like, dude, like you're way too closed off.
Yeah.
Like go experience a bit, have a college experience, go
And
have fun.
sometimes it can be like just like, what are you saying kind of thing. Like, they just don't understand.
Yeah, they don't understand, and they're like I was talking to someone about like the way a lot of Halloween costumes are for guys and
Yeah.
girls. Like a lot of
Yeah.
the guys' costumes are like shirtless, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And I was explaining like, and they were like, they couldn't fathom covering themselves.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
interesting. It's like that's why I'm not going. And
Yeah.
the thing is, like, if you can't fathom that, if you can't understand why I would choose to cover myself
Yeah.
and not go to a Halloween party because of even just that sole reason,
Yeah.
then obviously I'm gonna get some like looks or some comments
they-
like,
and
why
they
are
don't
you
even-
doing that?
They don't have to understand. It's just it's a level of respect that comes with respecting other people's choices.
Yeah.
And sometimes I feel like
That can be lost, especially when somebody
Yeah.
feels like they're more educated than you,
It-
and they
that-
understand.
that's
See,
where it is.
that's where
That's
the,
where it
that's where
is.
the academic institution plays into it, right?
Yeah.
Where you're
It gives you a sense of entitlement and ego to the fact that I am educated and therefore I know more than you.
yeah, and
Which the education system is trying to break down slowly with like DI initiatives and things like that. But you have to admit that it does exist.
yeah,
There exists a system where being educated means that you have more information, you have more understanding, and therefore people who go against those kinds of things will always be viewed as lesser than. So when
and if the majority,
exactly.
yeah, if the majority is at an education like very good, like again, a big party school.
Yeah.
So if the majority are going
One
to
of the biggest parties.
one of the biggest party schools,
Yeah.
so if the majority are going to a party,
Yeah.
then
And
they see that
that majority is educated.
then they see that as the right thing to do.
Yeah.
So if someone is not
It's just
doing
like, they
it,
just correlate that together. Like, I'm educated, I'm going to a party, therefore going to a party must be good.
yeah,
You are educated, but you are not going to party there. But there are more of us. That means that we are right and you are wrong.
yeah, exactly. And it happens so subconsciously.
Yeah.
Like it's like
Very
it's like
implicit.
they don't people don't realize it.
Yeah.
Right? And then the effects of that onto like us, for example, is we're like,
Am
am I uneducated? Or like, and you're like,
you get
oh,
imposter syndrome
yeah,
a
you
little
get
bit,
imposter syndrome. You're like, wow, all my friends, like,
am I
kids getting
uneducated or am I doing something wrong? Like, I am educated. Maybe I should be going to the
Yeah.
party.
The
Or
work
maybe I'm
hard-
not educated.
the
Or
work
maybe
hard-
I'm dumber than all these people.
yeah, the work hard, play hard mentality.
Yeah.
Like they're working hard, they're
Especially in
playing
LA.
hard. Should I do the same thing? Like, right?
Yeah.
Because they're going to the same class as you are and they're scoring better.
Yeah.
But then they go to the party every week and you're like, wait, should I be following them around?
And I
'Cause-
don't party, but I still get the same grades. What's happening? Kind of thing. Yeah.
So that's like, it's like a mixture of things. But that's been my experience with non-Muslims. I will say this. It has probably been worse with Muslims. But
yes.
but
We'll get to that.
we'll get to that in a second. But honestly, that is probably my most common experience. That's what happened a
Mhm.
couple days ago.
Okay.
And man, like I'm really glad someone like pointed out that topic for us to like talk
Yeah.
about.
No. That DM you sent me. That's amazing.
Yeah. So because like
topic.
I'm like, wow, that just applies to exactly what happened like 2 days ago.
Yeah.
So what about your experience with non-Muslims?
Okay, so I've lived in many different places throughout my life. I was born in Wisconsin, moved to North Carolina, moved to Oregon, then I came here. So each of these places were a very different demographic. So in LA, let's take a step back. Let's go to Oregon. So I spent about 4th and 5th grade in Oregon. So that's like about the time when people are starting to develop a sense of identity. I was developing my sense of identity as a Muslim. Certain things I wouldn't do, certain things I wouldn't say, certain things I wouldn't interact with, and that got the same exact response we were talking about. Like, people wouldn't understand. They'd be like, what are you doing? Like, we're all in elementary school in America. Like, we're all educated, that kind of thing. I feel like coming to LA, yes, I've gone both sides of it, but alhamdulillah, one of the things I've realized that being in a more liberal institution like LA, especially in 2022, where we have more diversity, equity initiatives, and we have more awareness of the different kinds of belief systems that people have, I feel like the majority of people that I met at USC, alhamdulillah, haven't been like that. I'm sure I've met a minority of people that, as you described, would be like, what are you doing? Like, are you okay? Like, what's going on? But alhamdulillah, the majority of people that I've met, they've honestly been understanding. They've honestly wanted to explore more, like want to learn more in certain situations. If it's more like, if it's like over text, if someone invites you for a party over text, that's different. But if they're like talking to them in person and they're like, invite you to a party and you're like, no, or like, don't want to give you a handshake and you're like, hey, I don't do physical contact with people of the opposite gender, they're usually very receptive to it. So, but with Muslims though, that's where I get it. I get that response from the Muslims at USC or at any college or
so you're
anywhere.
you're like non-Muslim friends, like the experience has been kind of similar than to mine, right?
Yeah.
Like it's like it varies in between like maybe not fully comprehending or maybe like a slight bit of like arrogance, but usually that's like the extent of it.
Yeah.
And because we have those boundaries and they're pretty clear cut and they understand it's clear
Well,
cut.
maybe it's just the people that I interact with. It's
Yeah.
just that. But being at an institution in LA like USC, you get a diversity of people. You get a very big diversity. So you see people that have experienced other, like I'll tell you about one of my friends. He's white, but he grew up in the Bay Area, so he grew up around a lot of Muslims. He's like the funniest guy I know, and he'll be like, he knows a lot about Islam too. So he'll be like, one time I texted him at 2 a.m. for like an assignment, and he was like, brother, why are you awake at 2 a.m.? It's not even Ramadan right now.
Oh my God.
It was hilarious. Okay. I love this guy, but that's what I'm saying. So like I've met people who have experience with other cultures, and therefore they're more receptive to other frameworks, other ways of thinking and things like that. But yeah, sure, there are some people that are not very receptive to it as well.
Yeah, but the boundaries are set clear enough, hard enough that it's very minimal.
It's more manageable.
Yeah,
it's more manageable.
It's not like a long-lasting hurt or pain
or like grudge or like people looking at you like very, very different. Like they might be like, okay, I'm not gonna invite this guy to a party anymore, but they'll still be chill with you.
And there's a level of like condescending sometimes when they think they're more educated, but that's usually where it ends. And honestly, to navigate all that is a matter of like experience and then also determining who your friends are, because non-Muslim friends who there are plenty who will respect your decision. For example, the guy you were talking about, right? So like it's a matter of like if you're having a really bad experience with non-Muslim friends, I would highly advise you to find a new group of friends.
Just find more.
Yeah, like
inshallah they will be out there, especially at the institutions that we have in the U.S. Like the majority of them have a pretty good enough diversity where you will meet people where you will meet non-Muslims who have experience with people who are of other cultures. Yeah, inshallah.
Yeah, exactly. Not the Muslims.
Low key dreading this, but we got this. We got this.
We'll break this down. It's a more hot topic in the sense that
it
could offend individuals. So before we even start, I'm gonna say straight up, like, our intention is not to offend anyone.
Absolutely not.
But the goal is to always, no matter who you are as a Muslim, the goal is to always be chasing improvement, right? So if you are stagnated, that is the worst thing that could happen. It doesn't matter where you stagnate.
Also, let's just say also that this whole conversation that we're having today, it's less about explicit bias that people have and more implicit bias. It's more people. It's more the thing that people don't realize that they're doing, but it just happens naturally because of experience that you've had, because of all like we experience life. We experience life when we get things out of life, and those things compound to a way of thinking. And it's not. I'm not saying that it's not your fault. I'm not saying that is your fault. But I'm saying that through this episode we want to bring another way of thinking that can be added to your life experience that can hopefully help the way that you treat other people.
Exactly.
Inshallah.
So with that, we'll dive into this aspect of it, and this is a thing that I think is a bit more controversial. But when you choose to do certain things as a Muslim, you will get varied responses from the Muslim community.
Also, because the Muslim community is just as diverse as any other community.
Exactly.
We want to appreciate that diversity, but we also want to understand the fact that there is a similarity that we share, that we are all Muslim brothers and sisters.
Exactly.
And let's get into it.
Yeah. So, same context, same situation. You have a couple Muslim friends who choose to do their own outing on Halloween night, right? Or choose to do whatever they want. Yeah. And if you or any situation, like if you're approached by Muslim friends who wanted to go out to dinner at a mixed party, or they want to do something else that might not be within boundaries, right? Yeah. They're still Muslim. Okay, they said their shahada, they pray, they're with
the
you.
Shahada is like the bare minimum to be Muslim.
They're at Jummah. Some of them might be doing praying all 5 times a day. Some might be praying fewer, different levels, fasting Ramadan. So they're still Muslim.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
But the issue occurs when you decide to say no to something like a Halloween party, and especially when you're again at a higher level institution, a liberal institution that's highly educated, right? You might get the response from Muslim brothers and sisters that'll straight up be like, "You're way too conservative. Yeah, this isn't a good balance."
Yes,
they might not call it out explicitly either. They might say implicitly show like, "Oh, that's a bit too conservative, don't you think? Yeah. I'm Muslim. I feel
and like broadly fine. Like that's what I get a lot.
Yeah,
like,
it'll be fine. Like, oh, it's within boundaries and that. Like you'll be
they'll try to justify it with their own like hadith or whatever, and like that's fine. Like you are entitled to your own way of being Muslim, and so am I.
Exactly,
that's the thing. And we can both respect you. We can both be brothers and sisters. But at the end of the day, like it is important to understand the fact that like each individual person And this is also a thing, like what I was looking at a lot of like the online political debates about like the hijab bans in some places and the hijab requirements in some places. What Muslim women are fighting for is the right to choose. It's not the right to have hijab or the right to ban hijab. And in the same way, when you are a Muslim at an institution, you should have the right to choose how you practice Islam.
And the issue
we
that we're talking,
other,
and we should support each other. And the issue we're talking about is
when you want to be a practicing Muslim, what would be considered conservative in today's standards, where there are other people who don't want to practice in the same way, putting you down because of the way you want to practice.
Exactly, and removing your ability to choose.
Yes.
Right. And that
can more like you still have the ability to choose, but removing their friendship or their support out of that equation.
It inhibits or it makes it harder for you to choose, right? It makes you harder to stay steadfast in what you chose to do, especially because it's coming from a Muslim brother or sister, right? So I have definitely felt this. You probably have too.
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna talk so blatantly today, and I apologize if anyone's listening to this who knows me, but
I'm not gonna apologize. What I will say though is that like, don't take this as a personal offense. Don't take this as like, what we are saying that like all the people who we've interacted with who have treated us this way are like bad or they did it out of the badness of their hearts.
It is good to be aware.
It's good to be aware.
This is something that you will face.
Yes.
Growing up in college and growing up in the real world, right?
Yeah.
Growing up in a Muslim environment, this is something you will face. Yeah. Okay, and
growing up in any Muslim community will face this.
Yeah, and it's very good to talk about. Okay, we're just gonna dive into it now, right?
Let's go.
So,
we're like tiptoeing around a little bit.
Yeah, we're tiptoeing around a little bit, but essentially, if you get a approach to do something that you do not want to, that is out of your boundaries for you personally as a Muslim, and it's coming from Muslim sisters or brothers, you essentially are setting yourself up to be viewed as highly conservative, and that can
too Muslim or like too restrictive.
Too restrictive, right? And that can make it seem, and again in a higher level, like educational institution, it can make you feel as if you're not balanced, or it can make you lose your friends, right? Yeah. And it could be like, oh, this person has these limits, right? Yeah. Therefore, my limits aren't that far, and so I'm gonna go do what I want with my people, and we'll just like push that person a little bit with the side.
because they're not gonna join us anyway.
They're not gonna join us anyways, right?
Yeah.
And if you choose not to join, if you choose not to dip into those things, you end up losing people, right? You end up being more lonely, right?
Fact, yeah.
And so what happens is one of two things: either you have that lonely experience, or you're like, I'll lower my boundaries.
Give in a little bit.
I'll give in.
Yeah.
I'll
compromise.
And that's why it's more dangerous, I think, with other Muslims.
Yep.
Because you're willing to let yourself get complacent.
Yeah.
Because you're just like, who's going to be there when I get next level, right? Next step. Because in an institution like this,
we always talk about like coming to college and making friends, like having friends. Like I heard this so many times watching a lot of like college YouTube videos, as a lot of people do before coming to college.
Yeah.
And everyone would be like, college is gonna be so miserable if you don't have friends.
Yeah.
So I was like, I've met so many freshmen who the first question they'll ask me is like, how do I make friends in college?
Yeah.
How do I go into college and meet new people and like become best friends for life? And like people will give you all this stuff about like, oh, the people you meet in college are the ones that you're gonna know for life, and like it's a very important time to like meet the good people.
Yeah.
And by doing that, there's also this pressure placed on, especially Muslim brothers and sisters. For the non-Muslims, maybe it's not as much. Yeah. But for Muslim people, there's a lot of pressure placed on, oh, I need to find good Muslim friends, but I also cannot be alone because it's college.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, you start to give in a little bit because you feel like these are the only Muslims in my vicinity who I know and I really want to hang out with because they seem really cool, but I have limits that are higher than their limits, and therefore I won't be able to hang out with them. But you either, like you said, isolate yourself and be like, I guess I'm not going to have any friends in college, or you'd be like, I'll give in a little bit. I'll skimp out a little bit here of my restrictions here and there.
Yeah. So from this point on, if you're listening from this point on, it should be from the perspective that you're choosing. We're going to talk from the perspective that you're choosing not to lower your
expectations, restrictions, limits.
So if you decide, and this is your decision entirely, up to you.
It's a very personal decision. You have to sit and think through it.
Yeah. But if you decide that, yes, I'm going to lower my guard, lower my expectations, I will go partake in this, then the rest of this episode is not for you.
It's not going to be very helpful.
Yeah.
I'll still listen to it because it might change your mind, or it might just add another perspective to it.
But it's not going to be that helpful because we're coming from the perspective of looking at those friends and being like, no. Okay, so now we're there. You said no. Now your friends look at you. First comes peer pressure.
Yes.
Okay, first comes their attempt to be like, bro, we're not going to be smoking because these are Muslims.
Yeah.
So
these are Muslims,
like, let's say their boundary is no drinking, no smoking, no vaping.
Yeah.
But they're totally okay with going out on a late night, hanging out in a mixed group, et cetera, right? If that's their boundary, okay, but that's not my boundary. Their first thing is going to be, we're not going to do anything haram, like crazy haram. We're going to be fine, right? We're not going to do anything crazy. We're not going to bed with each other, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff, okay? That's the peer pressure aspect.
Yep.
Is trying to, and no one realizes this, but in reality, what is that? Is they're trying to invalidate what your belief is.
Yeah.
And even they may not realize it. Their intention might be just like, truly, we want to take our friend out to have some fun. Yeah. Like, we want to have a good time.
We're all Muslims. Like,
we're all Muslims. We'll be fine. But what they essentially are doing is they're making it seem as, to you, they make you feel as if you're living a bit too conservatively.
They invalidate your life choices.
They invalidate your life choices. And so that's the first thing, is that peer pressure comes up. How do you even deal with that? I can explain how I deal with it.
Go for it, and I'll take
when I have been hit by that, and I've been hit by that starting from like 2 years ago up till this point. It was a lot harder to manage like last year and the year before that. But I think throughout this year and like maybe late last year, I realized if I am to compromise myself in this situation, where does that limit end?
Yeah.
In college, it's going to be going out on a night.
Yeah. Late at night, mixed groups.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever it may be.
Whatever.
If I choose to do that, I am allowing myself to go in the direction that is opposite to where I'm where the Quran is telling us to go. Okay. So I straight up use the Quran as the goal of where I want to reach. Mm-hmm. If anything makes me go away in that direction, then there is, who knows where the limit's going to stop.
Yeah.
So if I look at it, if I get like that peer pressure, like right into like, oh bro, it's not that bad. I'm like, yeah. I'll say this verbally too. I'll be like, yeah, it's not that bad right now. But what if I go further? And usually people combat that, be like, well, bro, we're not going to do that stuff. Like, we're not going to do that. We don't do that.
But you can predict the future.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, no, you might not. But there are Muslim brothers and sisters who do.
Yeah.
And there are other Muslim brothers and sisters who do worse.
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. It goes down that list. And
you give an inch, they take a foot kind of thing.
Yeah. So if you allow...
You give an inch, shaitan takes a foot. Yeah.
If you give an inch, shaitan takes a foot. Yeah. Yes. So if you allow yourself to let yourself buy into that pressure of, oh, maybe I am too conservative. Maybe I shouldn't be doing this.
Yeah.
You're setting yourself up to go down that path at any future point in your, at any point in time in your future. Yeah. So once you're in a masjid society, once you're in a big group, like this didn't happen at a local masjid where I'm from.
Oh, really?
But some guy was found laundering money, right, from the masjid.
Oh, yeah.
Like $200,000 worth, right? And no one knew he'd been working there for 4 years. But what if I'm at a position where I know that I'm never going to steal money from the masjid?
Yeah.
But there's a group of guys in the masjid on the board. They're like, yeah, we all take our cut. Like, we deserve it. It's like $2K each of us. Don't worry, you're being too
or even less than that. Let's say like the board has a meeting and you all like order food using the masjid budget. Or something.
Or you even order food using masjid's budget, right?
Yeah. It's just for the meeting. We're meeting for the good of the masjid.
Exactly.
Whatever. Yeah.
So if you allow yourself right now to go out with your friends in college. Yeah. At that point in time, you're more prone to lower your values to appeal to others.
Yeah. And
and just like in the masjid scenario, if you don't appeal there, you might get kicked off the board because it's a voting system next year.
Yeah.
Just like that would happen.
Masjid politics, man.
Masjid politics. Just like that would happen, the exact same way in college, you might lose these friends.
Yeah.
And that is the reality of it. Like,
it's a reality you have to accept. And it took me forever to accept that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also think like Islam is like it's like an armor you build around yourself, and Iblis, Shaitan, is always looking for chinks in that armor. So the moment you say, "Hey, I'll let this is fine," it's not. I'm like bending the rules a little bit. Shaitan will hop on that opportunity right away.
Yeah.
Like yes, you can say you might be able to sort of delude yourself into thinking, okay, I'm only going out late at night. I'm not doing anything else. Or I'm only doing this. Or I'm doing that. But realize that like those things will compound and they will add up and they will reach you and they will lead you to a point where. Like I said, you give an inch, shaitan will take a foot.
Yeah, and I like that analogy because the perspective should be this. It's not how much armor you have on.
Yeah.
You should always be adding more and more armor.
Yeah.
Same way you're becoming a better and better Muslim.
Exactly.
But once you add it on, don't let it move.
Yeah.
Right? Like, don't be the guy who for 4 days decides to do something And then he like slowly gives it some leeway and slowly, because eventually that piece is just going to come straight off. That armor piece is going to come straight off. And there is no compounding effect then. If you can hold on to that armor for a longer period of time, then you can keep adding to it. It'll become sealed onto you. It's
stronger.
It's easier to hold on to it, right? That's why we have the whole concept of even if
your iman.
You're strengthening your iman, even if everything you're doing is haram, if you're like drinking every single day, go pray 5 times a day.
Yeah.
Like find a staple that you're just going to do every single time, and other things will start being added to it, right?
Yeah.
So the peer pressure comes first, right? Yeah. And the way to combat that peer pressure is simply to understand what is going to happen when you say no, right? When you say, that's not my thing.
I also think it's accepting reality. For me, it took me a while to accept reality. I was like, these are Muslim people. These are my Muslim brothers and sisters that I'm hanging around with. Mm-hmm. Whatever they are doing as a collective group, there must be some barakah in there because they're Muslim, right? Yeah. So I should, like, if I give in a little bit and just to be within that group, there shouldn't be any negative consequences, should there? That was the question I would ask myself.
Wow, yeah.
And it took me forever to accept the reality that just because a group of people is Muslim does not mean that they are infallible. Does not mean that they are perfect.
Does not mean that everything they do is filled with barakah and goodness.
Yeah, absolutely.
There are still things that you can do. And
you still have to analyze for yourself with the life choice that you have decided to make.
Yeah.
Within that framework, with that lens, you still have to analyze everything around you. For a while, I would be like, okay, if it's Muslim people, I can just blindly just rely on them. I can blindly just do whatever I want. It doesn't matter because they're Muslim, and because like whatever we're doing as a collective, as a group, I'm sure there's like a system of checks and balances going on. There usually isn't. There's no checks and balances systems going on within a group usually.
That's very fair. Yeah.
And there's a barrier. There's a barrier to accept the reality that yes, you have to live the life that you have chosen for yourself. If you have chosen for yourself that I want to be a practicing Muslim, I want to get better every day, and I want to continue to build this armor of iman around myself, that there are certain things I'm going to have to give up, and there are certain people that I'm going to have to lose and that will not support me.
Yeah.
And it's and on top of that, you have to realize it's okay. There are people I will find people that want to support me on this journey, that the Muslims in my vicinity are a small fraction of the Muslims I will meet throughout my life. These are not the only Muslims I'll ever meet. If I want to meet more Muslims, I can put myself in situations where I can meet more Muslims.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I guess it can be summed up as understanding the reality in that peer pressure moment.
Yeah. So it's a very emotional thing, and emotion is like the enemy to reality sometimes. Emotion will blind you. That's why it's called blinding emotions. So when it is a very emotional state, when you are seeing all these people around you having fun, going out at night with Muslims,
especially when they're Muslims, like
when they're Muslims,
it's like you literally are like, are you not the people who follow my God too?
And it's also because like when I was in high school, I barely had any Muslims, so I was like, okay, the reason why I'm not having fun right now is because everyone else that's having fun is non-Muslim. Therefore, my time will come when I'll meet other Muslims and I'll be able to have fun. And sometimes that time comes in college, but you're still like, these Muslims that I'm hanging around with are not sharing the same life choices I am.
Yeah.
And I'm not having fun. Like, will I ever have fun?
Exactly.
And that's when Shaitan comes in and he's like, just give it a little bit. Just give it a little bit here, give it a little bit there. Just go hang out. Don't engage. Don't partake in the activities that they're doing. Just sit there. Just be with Muslims.
Yeah, that's one of the ways Shaitan actually draws away some of the strongest believers. He makes the sins look good.
Yeah.
And what's one of the best ways to make social outings look good is if everyone put a bunch of Muslims together. If there's a ton of Muslims together, that means they must be filled with goodness, right?
Also, social outings by themselves are not bad. It's just it's just certain aspects can make it bad, like going out very, very late at night, gender relations, lots of factors.
Yeah, but like there's an event today that I couldn't go to, but like I would have loved to gone was the Brothers Beach Day. Yeah, like. Not saying don't go be social. Like that's something great.
Socialization is important as a human being. You should be socializing.
100%. As a Muslim, you're encouraged to socialize. It's with a social community.
Yeah. I'm not saying we're not saying that you shouldn't associate with the Muslims around you.
Yeah.
We're just saying that there might come up times when there might be certain groups of Muslims you might want to interact with, and they might not be like this all the time, like you were saying.
Yeah.
They're not like this. They might not be like this all the time.
But in that certain case, an event.
In a certain case, in a certain event, on a certain day, there might be a group of Muslims who are doing something that does not agree with your life choices. And it's okay. And you have to accept the reality that it's fine that I will stick to my life choices and I will not engage in this.
Right. So, okay. We've settled on that.
Yes. That was very long-winded. But
no, that's fair. It makes sense. So you've gotten past that peer pressure thing, right? Let's say in our hypothetical case scenario that you got approached, you said no, you understand the reality of what's about to happen, your friends go and do their thing, and
You scroll through Instagram and you see the story.
you scroll through Instagram, you see the story, right? Like it's
FOMO.
right? So we're past the point of decision.
Yeah.
So you've
Now
done
we're
the
in the
right.
aftermath.
Yeah, you've done the right thing now.
Yeah.
At this point, subhanallah, amazing, mashallah,
brother.
Good
Mashallah,
for
sister.
you.
Good for you.
You
We're
did
very
the
proud
right
of you.
thing. We're proud of you. Okay. It's now is the
Aftermath.
kickback, the fallback, the aftermath. The how do I heal from this? How do I feel good about this so that I can get stronger in my iman? And how do I stop myself from getting into the sadness so that the next time it comes up, I'm like, I felt so sad last time.
Yeah.
Let me go do it this time.
Yeah.
Right? So how do you
I've experienced that last year too. Yeah.
So you're probably the best one to start with this one, but how do you after you have said no, after you made this is the best decision for you, after you have done that, how do you look at it and be like,
the one thing I've adopted in my life is that if I am ever feeling sad for something that another human being has done to me, for something that I have done to another human being, for something, anything with other people, because people will give you emotion. That's just how life works. Like you will interact with people, get emotions out of that. The fallback, the emotions, whether it be positive or negative, especially when it's negative. If I get an emotional response, an emotional feedback from someone else, from some other human being that I feel is negative, the first thing I turn to is Allah. Because that is how it should be. If it's like, yes, like it is important to also reach out to your friends and all of this. Like the non-Muslim mental health aspect will say, hey, if you're having trouble with a friend, go to another friend and talk to them about it. And yes, that you should be doing that. You should be reaching out to your friends, people who support your family, to reach out to it. But the first thing you should turn to is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if I'm ever feeling sad or I'm feeling down, the first thing I'll do is it's probably salah time. It's probably some salah time around that time. So I'll just go right away and do my next salah, and that'll put a little bit of peace in my heart for a moment.
I like that.
It'll come back. It'll, like, because after salah you might go pick up your phone again, and then you'll see the next story of them hanging out again.
Sure.
But I try to I like to treat salah in these times as a sort of buffer period, for a sort of like hit pause on that situation and pause on those emotions for a little bit. And then the next step would be to reach out to friends, family, to reach out to some other person who understands what you're going through. And this is where it comes back. Like, you might not find these people right away in college. And that's when you keep turning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, keep strengthening your iman, do things. Because first of all, why was the reason that we were sad about this in the first place? Because we didn't get to hang out with other Muslims, right? We feel like we're being robbed of a sense of Islamic community. We're being robbed of Islam sometimes. That's sometimes how I felt.
We lost the people who are supposed to be our people.
Yeah. Sometimes I'll feel like, okay, I wasn't able to go to this thing because it doesn't agree with my life choices. But all those people are still Muslim. So I feel like I've lost a part of Islam within myself. How do you get that part of Islam back? It's by turning to Allah. It's by reading Quran, doing salah, doing whatever it takes to keep putting a buffer on those emotions with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And inshallah, by doing these things, it leads you to a place where you'll be able to meet other people who share the same values as you. That's how I dealt with it. Alhamdulillah, I met you, my brood.
Nice. That's a very good take.
Yeah.
I actually like that. So I agree with that. That's actually what my answer was going to be too, is you will turn to other people. Some of them will be friends who have the same boundaries as you, right? Sometimes they'll be your parents, right? If that may be the case. Sometimes they'll be siblings. But the very first thing you turn to is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the very first place you go. As soon as you have made a decision, I mean, if you're at this point in life and stage where you can say no and you feel good about it, then that's where you
Not just Islamically, that's just a life skill to have.
Yeah,
saying no.
Yeah, if you can say no and you can feel good about it, even in this situation, then that's actually where we're trying to get you to be at, right? Yeah. So this isn't for that, but this is like straight up after you're like, oh, like all my Muslim
said no,
friends
and now it's the aftermath.
And now it's aftermath. If you're feeling that aftermath, first place, I promise you, I'm not over exaggerating.
It'll be a big like
I'm not over exaggerating. Like seriously, like if you have had to say no to something that you really wanted to do, especially when it's Muslim friends who are asking you to go out or something, go and you said no and you're like, no, 100%, I'm doing this, I'm sending my faith, and then you feel the sadness, run to your Jinmas, run to the Masalla, run to the masjid, run. I am not kidding. Run. To wherever you can perform sujood. And
it's going to take a minute. Like, it takes practice. The first time I had to do it, it's kind of like biology, enzymes, activation energy. There was a big activation energy that was required to get there.
Sure.
But practice helps. Practice drops that activation energy down a little bit.
Give it a shot. Let that be your place to go. If you want to cry your heart out, cry it there, right? If you want to let all that raw emotion that's hitting you like a truck come out on the prayer mat.
Yeah. Put it in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He will help you deal with it.
Once it's all there.
Yeah.
right? Once you found like a level, like a decent level of stability, where you're like, okay, I got everything out of my system, like I've tried it out.
Yeah.
Now you turn to people who might be able to help you,
Yeah.
right? Now you turn to your friends, right? You might have a sense of feeling after all that too, like who should I go to now?
Yeah.
So like that's something that happened to me is when I used to go to Paramat, I realized like, damn, like I should probably call my parents. Like they're the only people out there who have unconditionally been like there.
Yeah.
They never asked for anything, and I'm like, and the only reason I felt that was because I turned to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first.
Yeah.
I didn't immediately try and go like fill that hole in my heart by stuffing it with other like Muslim friends who have the same boundaries. I didn't do that.
And that's what I think too. It's like when there are certain negative emotions that come from a human interaction, going to another human doesn't solve it right away.
You might get lucky.
You might.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, the foolproof way to solve that is first to go to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Yeah.
First to go to hit that prayer mat, run as fast as you can, like you said, and then go to other people.
And even in a secular standpoint, like what do they say? They say like take some time to yourself, meditate, journal.
Yeah.
What and in this case,
we're just replacing that aspect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with Islam.
And that feeling of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala providing you with the answer that you need.
Yeah.
Okay. So once you have given yourself some time there, for everyone it's going to be a different amount of time, like depending on the like case scenario, depending on who you are. But once
how well you know these people.
Once you have enough out on that prayer mat, or once you have enough out for Allah, and you're given by an inkling of a sense of direction, whatever that may be, you chase that.
Yeah.
Right. So like for me, that was forming a deeper, more meaningful relationship with my parents, and barakah came out of that. I'm now closer to my parents than I have ever been in my entire life. Right. Yeah. And that's because it was like, oh, I discovered that literally through this. Like I have Muslim friends who I can't go out with. Yeah. And I had to turn somewhere, and Allah was like, hey, I gave your parents for you. Use them. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So is there an experience like that? Like would Allah like provide you anything in that way, or what was your take, or did you find solace in like going to him, or how's that experience been for you?
Like I said, it's definitely like a pause button for me, because I think emotions they come in waves, right? Like it'll hit you like a truck, and then it'll be a little bit of calm, and then it'll hit you another again. Right. But to give myself a little bit of a pause from those emotions was salah, was Quran,
so it's regulation.
Was regulation, yeah. So I think especially right after saying no is when I feel the worst. Is like, what if I had said yes? And then I'm very good at making movies in my head. I think I could be a film director if I wanted to. Sure. So like I'll just write out a whole script in my head about how amazing it could have been if I had said yes, about how I still could have stayed halal, I still could have done whatever I wanted to do. Yeah. I still could have maintained my life choices. But to stop myself from that sort of hypotheticalizing everything, salah. Right. So reading Quran, these things, it gives you a pause. It gives you a little. It gives you a lot of solace for a moment of time until you're able to completely process through those emotions in a very rational way.
And so let's say we're moving past that. Okay. You've gotten asked this once, a couple months pass by, and you get asked again. Is it easier the next time?
I think it's harder.
You think it's harder?
Because yes, like this is assuming that you don't have any Muslim friends around you at this point. You don't have any friends that you can talk to. Like you haven't met those people yet. So say you said no, you played the movie out in your head, you did salah, you did Quran. A couple months went by, you're fine now, but the offer comes up again. This time I think it's even harder sometimes to be like, why don't I just say yes? Like last that whole endeavor was so hard last time. Why not just say yes? Why not just try it out a little bit, see what it's like? So I don't know. It's just keep a lot of practice, and over time it gets easier. And inshallah, at the end of the day, you have to meet people. It's very hard to go through this whole thing alone. Yes, I know a lot of people who have tried, who have gone out of it, who have gone out of college by being alone and doing their own thing. And sure, there's many ways to do that. You can throw yourself into your work. You can join extracurriculars. You can do certain things that are very structured to give you that sense of routine and to take your mind off of this. But at the end of the day, the best way to do this is to find other people who share an inkling of your values.
Yeah, and do it in the proper healing method. If your routine, etc., if it's meant to distract you to keep you away from it, don't do that. Yeah. If it's something that benefits and helps you and heals you.
But I also think that at some point, like there are certain communities that it's just very hard for people to find other practicing Muslims.
Yeah. Yes. If it comes to it,
that's like worst case scenario. Yeah.
Do what you need to do
to get out.
Right. Yeah. Like survival is the essence of Islam as well. Yeah. Like if like, this is not my advice.
Yeah.
But if you straight up like this is like in the Quran is like if you straight up need to eat pork to survive, then eat pork.
Yeah.
If you go sink into depression and have suicidal thoughts, if you don't go out with your friends and you literally have no direction, go do that.
Yeah.
Have boundaries, right? But do what you will take you. Again, the goal is to follow the word of the Quran.
Yeah.
So if it's a one-time thing that'll stress you out and make it worse for you later, don't do that.
Yeah.
Use your common sense. Like Islam is a very practical religion. You apply it to the times, right?
Yeah.
But make sure that if you kept applying it the right way, it would end up as the exact way of Quran said. Make sure it doesn't fall halfway to what the Quran says.
Yeah.
So whatever your plan is, make sure it ends up there. And then do the steps necessary to get there without, and it's very hard to like detail all this out and like plan it all out. But to the best of your ability, find ways to improve without too many modes of regression. Okay? So we're fortunate. We have each other. We have a couple of other friends out here who are great, right? We have parents, my brother, like different people from me, like that's from my perspective. But I'm very fortunate to have those. So I will say no to things that might seem even hyper conservative to some of my Muslim friends here who are already good Muslims. Yeah. And I'm able to deal with it because I have a good support group, right? If your case is that you would not be able to deal with it at all, and if crying out and talking to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is it's not enough to keep you away from regressing, then take it slow, one step at a time.
Also, don't be afraid to, I think one of the biggest things in college is that like you think that the people around you are the ones you have, are the only people you have access to. Yeah. Like make an effort to, it might take a little bit more time. Might take like a little bit of money on an Uber ride or a Lyft ride to the local masjid that's having a community event, but take that time out to really pursue that. Because yes, it can seem like, hey, I'm in college, I have all these things I need to do. The easiest access I have to Muslims is in my community. But if the Muslims in your community aren't the ones that you vibe with in the sense of personal life choices, take that time and it will pay dividends. Yeah,
there's so many,
and inshallah it will pay dividends. And sure, you might lose a couple of hours of study or an hour studying here or something like that, but manage your time and figure out a way to find other Muslims and keep on putting in effort to find other people who value your life choices.
Yeah, there's so many Muslims in the world. Like if your college has hundreds of Muslims, I promise you within a 20 this is my school, right? Within a 20-mile radius, there's thousands of Muslims. Okay? So just because you're like, if the 100 is something that you can't really work with, put in the effort to meet the thousands because they're around. It might just take a little bit more effort. Also,
realize that there are thousands. Sometimes I feel like we only see the people that are in our immediate vicinity, like the places that we frequent. Yeah. Especially like some schools might have hundreds of Muslims. I feel like having hundreds of Muslims sometimes even worse because you only see a small batch of Muslims that are within your area.
And you think that's all of them.
And you think that's all of them. And you see all these people who are living a certain lifestyle you don't want to live. Make that effort. And this is what non-Muslims tell each other too, is that to make friends you have to put in the effort. You have to put yourself in new places where you are meeting different kinds of people on a regular basis. Because if you don't and you only try to interact with people in your immediate vicinity, yes, you are going to have a very small sample size.
Yeah, exactly.
And within that sample size you might not meet the people that share the values that you want to share.
Exactly.
Yep.
All right, so let's recap this. So
all right. Step 1, peer pressure.
Step 1, you're going to be faced with peer pressure. In that moment, it's all about letting the reality sink in. Prepare yourself to understand the reality of what's going to happen. Yeah. If you can clearly see that, you can make a decision. Yeah. So now, let's say the decision you made is, no, I'm not going to partake. Aftermath. Now, be ready for the aftermath, the fallback, what's going to come, the FOMO, all that stuff. Yeah. First step for that, across the board for every Muslim out there,
run to the prayer mat.
Run to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Make dua, right? Yep. Sit down, pray the tahajjud, pray whatever namaz is there, etc., etc.
Make istikhara. You can, sure, you should be making istikhara before you make decisions, but even after the decision, you can still make istikhara and ask for solace from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the decision that you just made.
Exactly. Yeah. Do that. If you're hit,
actually, I want to add that too. If it's something that you know beforehand, like if it's just sure. A lot of times we associate istikhara with like big life decisions. Yeah. But it's important to note that the Prophet Muhammad used to also make istikhara before buying a pair of shoes. Yeah. So if someone approaches you about going somewhere to some place to hang out, and if it's Muslims too, you can make istikhara for that as well, and that will help you be way more steadfast in your decision of saying no or yes.
Exactly.
And there's a bit of like solace you can give yourself in the sense that I made istikhara before I made this decision, and therefore Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give me what's best for me.
Exactly. After you had turned to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, go to the people or the community that you know you have access to that
Get support.
support you. And then if you don't have those people, or if you want to grow those types of people, put in the effort, put in the actual active effort to go find more of those individuals and learn how to disassociate yourselves from those who make you feel as if you're missing out, having FOMO, and start associating yourself with those who...
All of this is about setting boundaries, realizing who you are, realizing your identity, realizing this is the way I want to live my life. I'm not going to let other people tell me otherwise, in the sense that like this is not the right way to live my life. Sure, you can get information, advice from other people, but you at the end of the day have to decide for yourself, what are my boundaries, what are the ways that I want to live my life, and I will only do this with people who support my decisions.
Agreed.
Yep.
100%.
Setting boundaries is important. All right. I think one of the reasons I definitely want to talk about this today is because we hear a lot on social media about the other side of it. We hear a lot about Muslims, and we've talked about this on this podcast too, because it's a very important thing to talk about Muslims who are struggling to become more practicing, and how do we break that barrier? How do we support them? How do we show compassion? That's extremely important, and a conversation that definitely needs to be had. But equally important is a conversation on the other side. It's Muslims who are very practicing, who are struggling to integrate themselves with other people, who are struggling to find other people who will support their decisions to live the life that they want to live and be practicing Muslims. So both these sides are extremely important. And inshallah, in this podcast, we want to encompass both sides, because people exist on all areas of the spectrum of Islam and Iman. We want to make sure that everyone here feels as though they're being represented, and that they're not alone in this journey. Yep.
Well said.
Jazakallah khair for listening. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum.